Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to Robocraft with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome to Maximum Loadout, also known as Phase 2, one of the largest gameplay changes in Robocraft for a very long time, and honestly, something I'm both terrified by and something I am really looking forward to seeing in the game. This is going to be a bit of a game changer and utterly insane. There's so much to cover, I've decided to split this video into two. In today's episode, we're just going to be doing an overview of all the major changes, and there are a lot of them. So let's get straight into it. There will be a gameplay video coming up tomorrow or the day after, in which I test out all of the changes and give my final verdict, or at least my early verdict. For now, we can only theorise on how certain things are going to act in the game, and be fearful of other elements. So the first thing I would like to get into is the power bar. Now this is a pretty crucial element in the game now, and certainly something I think bears talking about first. All weapons and modules, which are something completely new as well, now consume power, which you can think of as a resource much like mana in a fantasy game. The power recharges over time, 100% recharges in 10 seconds. If you use all of your power, then of course your weapons cannot fire, so all of your weapons will use up some part of this power, which is a pretty big deal since in the maximum loadout we can now swap weapons, which I'll get onto straight after this segment. So making sure you do some notice on how far your power is gone, how much you've drained already, is pretty important. Otherwise you might end up in a position where you can't fire, but you're being beset by enemies. Of course, if you're more of the Zerg Rush type of player, you can just fire and you might die, but it's going to be a lot of fun while it lasts. Weapons and modules all have separate recharge times, similar to the reload times we already have, but a little bit more distinct, at least that's what I've been told. These are shown as progress bars around the outside of each weapon in the loadout at the bottom of the hood. Now the reason why it's now called recharge rather than cooldown or reload is because of the new modules, which do definitely have a recharge time. These are the blink module and the disc shield module, at least I think it's called that. It's a shield module of some sort. You simply can't spam all of your weapons and expect to have no cooldown, otherwise that would be gloriously insane, and you could do a lot of burst fire, but I don't think it would be quite in the spirit of Robocraft. The power bar resets to 100% on full respawn, but recharge times do not reset on respawn, which is a little bit concerning to me, but I guess it is pushing the element of having multiple weapons, some with a much lower recharge time than others, to make sure you're always safe. If you're only using weapons like rails and perhaps the lock-on missile launcher, which we can only assume has the longest recharge time of all the weapon types at the moment, then you might have a bad time respawning with neither of them currently recharged. That would be pretty bad. Recharge times continue to count down even when a weapon is deselected in loadout or it has been shot off. These do include the modules as well, it does bear mentioning. So healing back a module or respawning does not insta-reset the cooldown time. That I actually really like, because in my mind, it's the idea of shooting off a volley from the lock-on missile launcher, and then once it's starting to recharge, swapping back to a lighter weapon like the laser or perhaps the plasma until it's fully recharged, still being as power conscious as possible, that was the term I was looking for earlier, and then swapping back to the missile launcher to unleash hell once more once it's fully recharged. That is a really cool concept, and it adds a little bit of thinking into the game, although I can see ways that certain combos are going to be absolutely amazing, and other combos less so. And of course, there are going to be those of us like me, who are going to bring every weapon type possible into the battle and just hope for the best. Because you're always going to want to be one weapon type at some point in the match, and bringing all of them would be hilarious, if incredibly expensive and difficult to actually pull off. So let's move over to the next most important aspect, the actual loadout system with swapping weapons. The new loadout system. For the first ever time in Robocraft, you can now put many different types of weapon on a single robot. This will also include the new modules, and the loadout system has 5 assignment slots. Pretty much this means every weapon class, every module takes up 1 slot, you can have a combination of 5, and of course you can combine any of them, which means a lot of people will try to endeavour to have as many situations as possible, or of course if you're incredibly aggressive, having plasma and lasers is a pretty cool concept. Release a volley of plasma and then move over to lasers to destroy the enemy. Something like that is pretty darn cool, but there's loads of combos, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the very good players figure out the best for their robot type, because although you can have 5 different modules, you still have a CPU limit, so adding them all could be potentially very difficult. And basically you put these all on your robot and have them assigned to the keys 1 to 5 on your number pad, so it should be pretty easy to swap between weapons in a match, and thankfully switching is free and instant, meaning it doesn't cost any of your power bar, so if you're suddenly in a bad situation, you're not going to be out of power to at least swap weapons, because I could see that becoming infuriating if that was the case. And with this, I think it's only fair we move on to the new modules. Definitely the most flashy element of the new patch, and if not the most exciting to me. Although they are both incredibly cool, I just love the concept of being able to swap weapons. After the modules, there's only one thing left to cover, which is the change to current weapons, which is actually really cool as well. A lot of changes now, and I mean this is in true changes which will alter the game state significantly. The new Blink module, a new high-tech gadget for your robot. This is a teleporter, and the first of the modules, and easily the most flashy. The Blink module consumes a lot of power and has a long recharge time, but for that cost it will allow you to teleport forwards towards your crosshair. If you are targeting ground, you simply go to the ground rather than through it, or let's say through an obstacle like a rock or something. You can't simply do that, although that is an awesome idea, because that would be a little bit on the insane side and cause all sorts of problems. So although you can't teleport through solid matter, you can certainly get to where you're going. Although I am a little bit scared that Tesseracts and other sturdy flyers will get the most out of this, the idea of a lumbering mech suddenly teleporting into the middle of a battle is exactly what I'm going to be using this for, and I look forward to seeing just that happen quite a few times. It does also bear mentioning, however, that this, like the Mega module, will have to be attached to your robot in some way, shape or form. Although it doesn't matter where it goes, this does need to be on your robot to actually function, and will take up a loadout key just like a weapon. And so we move swiftly on to the second and last module for now, the new Disc Shield module. Activate by pointing your crosshair and pushing the assigned key in your loadout. A small fusion shield will be created at the location of your crosshair in the shape of a disc. Now this is important to note, because a lot of people, including myself, thought this would be a shield which followed you around in the form of some kind of protective element. You could simply keep pointing at targets and making sure the shield points at the enemy who's firing at you, which, although a cool idea, did seem a little bit insane. Again, some people were fearing that this would be a bit too powerful for flyers, although I don't believe flyers are as big a problem as some people do. I certainly recognise it is very easy to make the flying type of robots very, very powerful with certain changes, but instead the disc is stationary. You place it and then it stays there, which is really, really cool in my opinion, because it's so strategic in comparison to if it simply followed you around. You can use it to block off areas, well, half block it off as we'll get into in a moment, or simply protect a vulnerable teammate from fire. It's really nice in that way. The fusion disc has the same properties as your base fusion shield, meaning that the enemy can drive through it, but they can't shoot through it. So although you're not going to block them off physically, it's going to be very difficult for an enemy to get through when you can fire upon them, but they can't fire upon you. Very similar to the base shield. So if you're pushing an enemy position, or you're doing something like a Megabot versus Megabot, this could very easily swing the tide of battle. Now, to make this a little bit less insane, because if it didn't have this it would be just completely overpowered and broken, it does have a longer recharge time than the Blink module, but it does also consume less power. So using it won't hinder you as much, but you've got to be more specific on when you're going to use it. And I've got to admit, I do think this may be one of my favourite things in the new update, just because of the possibilities of it. Do I think it's going to work perfectly, and do I think people are going to use it in the correct way? Likely not, including myself, or whilst we're trying to learn this thing. But in the future, and in particular for more competitive game styles, especially when things like clans are introduced, this is going to be amazing. And you can just imagine the better players using this to greater effect. I'm certainly not including myself there, as likely I will end up putting this thing right next to rocks every time, and getting almost no use out of it. If your crosshair is in the air, or beyond maximum range, the shield will be created in the air at the maximum range of the shield, which again is very cool, so you can protect from the skies aiming at a certain point in the air, so it's a little bit harder for the enemies to get into your weak spot of a group and shell you in that way. So it's going to take a lot of practice. Actually, in fact, it even says it's going to take a lot of practice. Again, you will need to practice with this module to get a feel for the maximum range, but I feel like once this is completed, it's going to be absolutely awesome. I keep on swapping between what's my favourite, the new disc shield and the Blink module, but I think once I have a go with both of them, I will figure out exactly which one is my favourite. And yes, of course, you can have both of these on your robot. Although your power reserves will hate you for it, you could blink somewhere and then instantly put up a shield, thus saving your team. I'm just thinking of all the amazing specific moments that are going to happen with these two module types. And so we move on to the next topic, which is the weapon improvements. There's a lot here to cover. And so we move on to the weapon improvements. Definitely one of the most comprehensive sections of the patch notes. But before we get to reading them in the order they are meant to be read, I would just like to mention a quick semi-correction from earlier. The railguns no longer actually have a true reload stage, which means, simply put, you can't fire them and then start to reload and swap weapon, because the reload stage doesn't exist. You can keep on firing them until your energy has been completely depleted. I think it's only fair I mention that, because I did allude to the fact you could fire the railguns and then swap weapons, if I actually keep that section in. Otherwise, this bit is just a bit of extra information. Anyway, weapon improvements. All weapons have been significantly reworked to integrate them with the power bar and loadout systems. Some of them have been changed more than others, but all of the weapon types have been changed in some significant fashion. To start off with, lasers are now real high-velocity projectiles, as opposed to hit scan, and therefore you need to lead your target depending on its distance to you. Simply put, they don't instantly hit the target, and the visuals actually mean something now. So hitting a target at very long range could be very difficult, and even if you are very good at aiming, a few shots are going to miss, whereas they would have hit in the past, because, well, it's very easy to hit something when as soon as you fire the weapon, it instantly detects if you're going to hit it, and then you don't have to lead at all. With the leading elements, it's definitely making them more of a close-range weapon as it gets into next, in which the lasers have been improved in terms of damage to make up for this. So at short range, you're going to be doing more damage than you used to. At long range, no matter how good you are at aiming, you are going to be doing a little bit less damage than before, unless of course the enemy is moving in the most predictable fashion possible, in which case, honestly, it's his fault, not yours. The next step is that the plasma launcher now fires its projectiles separately in a round-robin fashion. You can pulse the trigger to fire one projectile at a time, or hold the trigger to unleash all of your power bar in projectiles in a single clustered volley. To get a full volley, you need the full power bar, and of course the power bar takes 10 seconds to reload. I love this change because it gives you the option between the two. If it was making it only round robin rather than unleashing it as a volley, I would be a little bit upset, honestly. But because it gives you the choice, it makes plasma a little bit more flexible in terms of how you're using it, particularly when you're not sure if you can hit the target, but would rather cluster the air with a lot of shots over a wider area, perhaps against a flyer or such. If you're still not very comfortable using rails or flak or something like that, and you would rather stick to plasma because plasma is your favourite weapon. Plasma is certainly one of my favourite weapons, so I do love this idea. To compensate for the reduced frequency of the plasma's alpha strike, the plasma explosions now do an increased amount of damage in the centre, and a significantly increased amount of damage from their blast. So more damage, less frequent. I'm actually okay with that, and my favourite change about plasma, Mega Plasma can now fire one large projectile with a huge blast radius, and with increased damage to match. So rather than firing two, it fires one huge shot, which is such a cool concept, and I really hope this makes Mega Plasmas a little bit more useful for the Megabots, because, to be perfectly honest, I tend to find the SMG Megabots do a lot more for the group, at least in its current stage, and are better in a wider variety of circumstances. So this change, very much approve of, hope it's as good as it sounds. The rail cannons now fire round robin, like I mentioned earlier, correcting myself, and rail shots are now real projectiles, just like the lasers, and therefore users need to lead their targets. The velocity of the rail projectile is greater than the laser, as you would imagine, so leading them will have to be less extreme. But of course, against very agile flyers, this will pose a bit of an issue. But of course, that's why you have flak, and that's why they're trying to push you to have every weapon type possible. Rail cannon damage is now applied in a more penetrative way. Please say I said that correctly. So drilling into your target is more possible with a rail. I'm not 100% sure what that means. Does that mean that the damage doesn't propagate in the same way as other weapons? Or does it simply mean that it's more concentrated on the blocking hits? I don't know. There's a lot of ways to take that, and until the actual patch is released, I can't really say more about that. It's very cool, and I hope it means the damage is applied in a straight line rather than spreading out as much, but we can only see. The 6-gun limit has been removed. Recharge times now decrease further when you add more than 6 types of a weapon, with rails, lasers, plasmas, and nanos. So that's very interesting, especially since a lot of people are going to want to have loads of weapon types. This could encourage you to have just one weapon type and be really good with it. Do you want to be a dedicated healer then? Just loads of nano weapons. Do you want to be a dedicated anti-air? Loads of flak. Of course, that doesn't actually make any sense when it only affects rails, lasers, plasmas, and nanos, but I can't think of which one of those is now the anti-air, since both lasers and rails you have to lead your target a lot more. Although I do think rails, with their penetrative ability, might be able to even kill things like tesseracts if they do truly go through blocks rather than spread their damage in the normal way, because it means outer shells, triforcing, will be made useless by rail shots, so that's something to be considered. Now this one, I'm not too sure about. It's the first one I read and went, well, I'll have to see this in action for me to have a good opinion of it. The nano disruptors fire their beams as short pulses in a round-robin fashion, as opposed to multiple beams at once. You're going to be dakka-dakka-dakka-ing with your nano disruptor. Kind of a cool concept, but I do like my Healy beam, so, not too sure about this one, lads. Additionally, nanos will deliver significantly faster burst heal rate if you add more to your robot, but at the cost of depleting your power quickly. So, About that, I'm really not sure about this. I am hoping it's going to be as cool as it sounds, but I do have some reservations about taking away the healing lasers. Healing beams. So not too sure about that one, and again we'll have to wait until it's released to really see. To compensate the Nano's new burst heal potential, the Nanos no longer deal damage to enemies. They are exclusively heal only. And that's the second part, and really does lend you to want to have other weapons on your bot, even if it's just a couple of plasma or a couple of lasers, to make sure you can fight. Tesla blades are now only open when they are selected. If you switch weapon, they close, meaning Tesla blades are now officially a true weapon type, as they do need you to have a point in the loadout menu. So some people are going to love that, some people are going to hate that, some people like me are going to be very neutral about that change. Teslas do not have cooldowns at all, and no longer get destroyed when you make contact with an enemy, and no longer need you to heal them to regain their ammo. I am actually okay with this. I've always said I would much rather have a melee weapon which doesn't simply go away after the first hit and you can keep on attacking with, and would even make me consider using Tesla robots. It's the weapon type I've had the least experience with because I just don't like the concept of the old Tesla. I really like that though. Tesla blades now act like futuristic chainsaws, so the longer you have them in contact with the enemy, the more damage you will deal. Although I'm sure it will cause a lot of conflict. So I do like that. I do like that a lot. I'm not sure about the whole idea of it only being open when you swap to it, but I still really love that concept. Each Tesla blade that is in contact with an enemy will deal damage per second and consume power at the same rate. The more Teslas you have, the more damage per second you deal, and the more power per second you consume. Aero Flak and Rocket Launcher are pretty much as they were, but are now linked to the power bar and recharge systems. All weapons now rotate their turret at the same speed, at the faster speed similar to that of a laser, which is so nice as a plasma user, and firing weapons no longer resets health regen cool timer, so now only taking damage prevents you from regen. I really wish this was in a separate section because I almost looked over this the first time I was skim reading this, and this is a big deal. It makes hit and run tactics, it makes hiding behind cliffs and such so much better, and I'm not sure if this is a good or a bad thing, honestly. I like the concept, but I can see it being used in very devious ways, so only time will tell. Now, there are a lot more changes in the form of other changes, in the form of bug fixes and improvements, and honestly, I would recommend you reading these yourselves, as it's not really too amazing. It's just the usual gubbins. They've changed how some speeds work with some types of rudders and aerofoils. They've added extra bits, they've changed audio here and there, and they fixed a load of bugs in this lovely section here. So the link will be in the description. Changing my mind, as always, let's quickly read through the free premium for everyone, because who doesn't love a bit of free premium? I know I certainly do. We have added a new email reward system. When you log in, you will see a dialogue with instructions. If you provide a valid email address, you will get 1 day of premium for free. We will then send you a test email, and if you click the link inside, you will validate your email address, and the next time you log in, you will receive an additional 3 days of premium for free. We are doing this as we'd like to be able to send you emails when we release major updates to make YouTubers who cover the updates redundant. We will never spam you or share your data as per our terms and conditions, and you can unsubscribe at any time with a single click. And that is that. At least the major points of the maximum loadout. There are a lot more changes in the other changes, and of course the bug fixes, such as you can now overclock to level 15, and guns aiming no longer make your guns point at an ally if they fly in front of the camera, which is going to be awesome, but I think that is something you can read yourself, as it's not going to be apparent straight away when you get into the new game. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, and of course if you found it helpful, then likes, favourite, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that Robocraft is a series you wish to see continued in the future. And there will be a gameplay video of this update coming out very soon, hopefully tomorrow, but very likely on Thursday, purely because I am out of the house all day on Wednesday. Not exactly the best day to be unable to record when the new patch has just hit. So, once again, thank you for watching. The link will be in the description if you would like to read the entire patch notes yourself, and goodbye.